Alright, hey guys, hope y'all are having a good week. Today is April 15th, Wednesday. So y'all have the quiz and then we're going to do the lesson. And so we'll go ahead and I'll do two problems reviewing over the quiz and y'all can take it. Then I'll actually get into the lesson for today. And so for the quiz is over here on the left side of the board, or right side of the board, how you're looking at it. What happens here is we're going to do we're going to do the multiplication first. And so remember, when you multiply number, you're going to do number times number, but then you're going to add the exponents. And so if it's just one multiplication, that's how you do it, or if it's set up where you have multiple terms, that's how you're going to do it. And so here, you're going to do 7b squared times 6b cubed. And so I'm going to do the number times the number. So 7 times 6 would give you 42. And then you're going to do the b squared times the b cubed, which means you're going to do b to the 2 plus 3. So 2 plus 3 is b to the 5th, and so that term would be 42b to the 5th. So again, number times number, when you do variable times variable, you add the exponents. So then I'm going to do the second term, so I'm going to do 7b squared times the positive 2b. So I'm going to do 7 times 2. So 7 times 2 is 14. And then you're going to do the b squared times the b to the first, understood 1. And so it's going to be b to the 2 plus 1, which will give you plus 14b to the third. And so that is how the multiplication ones are going to work. Multiply number times number. When you multiply the variable, you just write the letter and then you add the exponents. Alright, over here is going to be a division problem. And so a division problem works the same way as the multiplication. The only difference is you divide number by number and then you're going to subtract the exponents. So multiplication, you add them, division, you subtract them. And so here, we're going to do negative 25x to the 5th. So I'm going to do the first term. So negative 25 divided by 5, negative divided by positive is a negative number. So that would be a negative 5. And then I'm going to do x to the 5th. So I'm going to do the 5 minus the 2 because it's division and I subtract. And so that will give you negative 5x to the third. So that will be the first term. Divide number by number, variable, you subtract the exponents. And then the second term there would be 10 divided by 5, which would be a plus 2. And then you would do x to the third, and you would do the 3 minus the 2. So 3 minus 2 then would be x to the first. And so it would be plus 2x to the first. So again, number divided by number gives me the 2. And then the exponents, since we're dividing, I just subtract. So I do 3 minus 2 and gives me x to the first. So those would be your answers there. And so that is going to be how you're going to work through the quiz. Remember, for the quiz, multiplication, you're going to do number times number and then add the exponents. For division, you do number divided by number and then you subtract the exponents. So you can go ahead and pause the lesson at this point, take the quiz, then come back and we'll cover our new lesson for the day. Alright, so hope y'all did good on the quiz. We'll go ahead and get started with the lesson for today. This is on pages 425 through 428. So, basically, again, it's going to build off what we've already done. So if you're okay with what we've done so far, this isn't going to be too bad today either. And so, a couple definitions here, just reading. It says the distributive property was used in section 10.5 to multiply polynomials. They give you an example there. Factoring a polynomial is the reverse process of distribution property. Factoring a polynomial expressions means separating the polynomial into a product of 2 or more of its factors. Recall that the greatest common factor is the GCF. It is the largest factor that the two numbers share. When factoring a polynomial, the greatest common factor shared by the terms of a polynomial will be a monomial, which means one term. And this monomial will be referred to as the greatest common monomial factor, which is GCMF. And it will be referred to, it will be the product of the GCF of all the numerical coefficients and the GCF of all the variables. And so basically that's just definitional to make sure we have that covered. I'll walk you through it as we work through the problems here. So if you look on page 427, we'll do number 2 first. So what they did was they kind of broke this down definitionally for you as you go through the process. So they gave you, like on number 2, they gave you c squared plus c, and then they're asking you for the GCF, which is the greatest common factor. It's what each of those terms have in common. And then they ask you for the greatest common monomial factor, so they kind of break it up step by step for us as we go. So for number 2, the first thing I want to know when I look at c squared plus c, the question I ask is what number goes into both of these? Do they have a number that they both share? And so notice here, the number is 1 and 1, and so that means there is going to be no numerical, no number that they both share, because 1 we just kind of don't worry about, because it's just 1 always anyway. And so there is going to be none for the number, the numerical one for number 2, because there's not a number that c squared and c share. Okay? Now the variable, looking at it, I'm going to ask the question, okay, what does, for number 2, c squared plus c, what variable do they share? What is the greatest, basically, letter and an exponent that can go into both c squared and c? And so basically what you want to think of is how many of them goes into each of them and try to figure out what that biggest number is. And so notice if I have c squared, that's c 2 c's, and then I have just a regular c here, so then I ask the question, okay, how many c's goes into each of them? Well, if this one has 2, and this one has 1, that means at least 1 goes into both of them. They both have 1. So this one has 1, and that one has 1. I couldn't say 2, because this one has 2, but that one doesn't have 2, it only has 1. So you want to see which one can go into both of them. And so it would just be the variable that can go into both of them is c. Because that has 2, c squared. This has c, just 1. So there's 2 here, 1 there. That means 1 could go into both of them. And then, so the greatest common monomial factor, the GCMF, is just a combination of these two. Whatever number you got here times whatever variable exponent you got here. And so the GCMF would just be c for this one. Okay? Now, as we work a few of them, you'll get the hang of it. So number 4 works the same way. I'm going to ask the question, okay, in this one right here, what number goes into both of them? Okay, what number was the highest number I can get that would go into each of these? And so, if you notice, you have 9 here and a negative 18 right there. And so, a 9 and an 18, what number goes into both of those? The highest number possible. Well, a 9 goes into each of them, and so 9 can go into this one, and 9 can go into that one, and that's the highest one. Notice I can do a 3 goes into both of them, but that's the smaller one. We want to know what the greatest one is. And so the number one here would be a 9 goes into both of them. So that would be 9. The variable, okay, I'm going to ask the question, okay, what variable was the highest variable that could go into both of these? Okay, well notice that this one has an A, but this one doesn't have an A. That means that it couldn't have an A that goes into both of them. Because this A, I could do an A here, but this one doesn't have an A, so an A doesn't go into both of them. So that kind of knocks out the A right off the bat. Okay, so then look at the B. Okay, both of them have a B, so I'm good there. So then I'm going to say, okay, how many can I go up to? How many B's can I name that can go into both of these? Well, this has a B, 1 B. This has 2 B's. So that means I can do 1 into here and it'll work, and I can do 1 to here and it would work. So it would just be a B. Okay? The question may be, okay, why couldn't I do B squared because it has a B squared? Well, notice that this B squared, I can do 2 B's into it, but this one only has 1, so I can't do 2 B's into it. I can only go up to that 1 time. And so that's why we choose only the B. Okay? So then, if you look at, so that one would be 9B. All right, look at number 8. So number 8 gives us this long list. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to do the numbers. So you're going to basically factor the numbers, see what's the highest number that can go into each of these. Okay, well I know that 42 is divisible by 7. I know 7 is divisible by 7. And I know 28 is divisible by 7. So the first kind of cheat you may want to try is look at your smallest number and see if the smallest number will go into the bigger ones. If it does, that's going to be your GCA. If this smaller number does not go into the bigger ones, then you have to do, okay, what number goes into it and what number can go into the other ones. But that's the good first step. See if this number goes into each of those. If it does, that's the number answer. So here notice that a 7 goes into 7, a 7 goes into 42, and a 7 goes into 28. So that means the 7 would be the numerical GCA. Then I'm going to look at the variables. So notice that the variables, this has an n to the 4th, this has an n squared, and this has a 28, an n, just an n. And so which n can go into all of them? What's the highest n that can go into each of them? Well, that's where you're going to want to look at the smallest one, and then that's going to be where your answer is. So again, in the first, one can go into there, that's good. One can go into here, one can go into here. So that means the variable would be n. Notice n squared can go into this one, n squared can go into that one, but n squared cannot go into this one. So it has to go into each of them. So that's why we can only do one n into this one n into that one, and then one n into that one. So one can go into all of them. And then you can look at the p. The p, this one has a p, but the other one has a p, and so it would just be 7n as your answer. And so that's all you're going to be doing, is basically going through on that first section 1 through 8 and saying, okay, what number do they have in common? And then what variable do they have in common? And so, again, the easiest way to do it is look at the smallest number, see if it can go into them. If it does, then that's going to be your numerical one. If it doesn't, then you have to say what goes into each of them. Then for the variable part, you're going to say, okay, how many of them can I pull out, basically? How many of them do they have in common? This one has 1, this one has 2, this one has 4. That means they all have at least one n in common. And so that's going to be the process there for 1 through 8. All right, 9 and forward. They're going to give it, they're going to kind of baby feed you it at first, and then at the very end, you're going to have to do it on your own. So if you look at like number 10, they give you 16w squared. Minus 24. And then they start to factor it. And they say, okay, we're going to pull out an an 8 from Bravo. And then we're going to say, okay, what goes into parentheses? Okay, so just kind of working through it. How did they get this 8? That's the question. How did they get that 8? Well, what they said was, okay, they looked at the smallest number and said, can that smallest number go into the other one? So can a 16 go into a 24 evenly? No, it cannot. So then they asked the question, okay, what can go into a 16 and go into a 24? So you can do the factors of 16, the factors of 24, and figure that out. So 6, the highest one. So 16, a 4 can go into both of those. So that could be what you started with. But also an 8 can go into both of those. And so 16, you can do the 8 go into 16, and the 8 will go into 24. And that's why it's 8. So they went ahead and did that for you. And then they're just saying, okay, if I've said an 8 is what they have in common, then what goes on the inside? Basically, all you're doing is dividing. So they pulled out the 8, so you're just going to do basically 16w squared divided by 8. You're just dividing whatever is out here into whatever you originally had. So you're going to do 16w squared divided by 8 minus 24 divided by 8. And then whatever you got here will go in that first blank, whatever you get here will go in that one. And then obviously these look very similar to what you did on the quiz. And so you're just going to do number divided by number. 16 divided by 8 is 2. And then w squared doesn't have another w to subtract a variable with, so it's just w squared. So then that answer goes here, whatever that division is. And then here, you're left with 24 divided by 8, which is a -3. And so inside that blank should be 2w squared minus 3. So once they factor it out, you just do this, divide it into that, and then that goes in your first term blank. And then you do this divided by that, and that gives you your second blank. All right, so look at, we'll do 14. So 14 says 25 p squared plus 15p plus 5. And then they did the factoring and said it's 5 times we don't know. Okay? So what they did was they went in and factored out the 5 for you. So to get how they got that 5 was they said, okay, I go to my smallest number. Can this smallest number go into each of those? In this case it does, and so that's why it was a 5. Notice the difference. Here the 16 did not go into 24, so you have to go, okay, what goes into 16? The highest number that goes into 16, that also goes into 24. Okay, so here the 5 was all the work, so that's what they did to get that. So what they want to know is, okay, we divided it, we're going to pull out the 5, so what's left? And so you're just going to do the first term divided by 5, so you do 25p squared divided by 5. Then you're going to do 15p divided by 5, and then you're going to do plus 5 divided by 5. Whatever this is, whatever this answer is, goes there. Whatever this answer is, goes here. And then whatever this answer is, goes there. And so that's all you're really doing. And so here, 25p squared divided by 5. 25 divided by 5 is going to be a 5p squared. The p has nothing, so it just stays. But 25 divided by 5 is 5. So then I'm going to do plus 15p divided by 5. And so 15 divided by 5 is 3. So that goes plus 3. And then the p is just written because there's nothing else there. And then here on the bottom, you do 5 divided by 5, which is just a 1. And so that will be what goes in there. And so again, basically on these problems, you're just taking whatever this is and dividing it into that. And so you're just setting up basically the problems like you did on the quiz. And then writing your answer in that blank. All right, we'll do one more of those. What's a good one? We'll do 20. So 20 is 4x squared minus 11 mx squared plus 18 m squared x squared. And then they say that was alright, so look at this one. So what they did was they said, okay, what number can 4 go into 11 and 18? No, it didn't. Okay, what goes into 4 that can go also into 11 and 18? Well, 11 is prime, so you can't pull out any number. So then they said, okay, this one has 2x's x squared, this one has 2x's, and this one does too. That means we can pull out an x squared. This one has an m and that one has an m, but this one doesn't, so you can't pull out an m. So that's how they got that x squared pulled out. Alright, so all they want you to do is figure out, okay, what goes in this parentheses. Once we pull that x squared out, what goes into it? The way you pull it out is by dividing. That's how we divide. And so you're just going to do 4x squared divided by x squared. Whatever that is goes here. Then we're going to do minus 11 mx squared divided by x squared. Whatever that is will go there. And then you're going to do plus 18 m squared x squared over x squared, whatever that is, will go here. And so that's all we're going to do. So 4x squared, x divided by x here, you do x to the 2 minus 2. That will give you x to the 0. Now remember, anything x to the 0 is just 1, and so really that's just 1. This whole thing right here is really just 1. That's the same thing, it's just 1. And so it's just 1 times the number in front, which is 4. So 1 times 4 is just 4. And so that's all that goes in here is a 4. Because the x squareds cancel, 2 minus 2 is 0. Anything to the 0 power is just 1. So then you do 1 times the number, which is 4. So 4 goes there. Now here, what we're going to do is you're going to do it the same way. You're going to do the x squared minus the x squared. Okay, notice what happens again is the x squared, 2 minus 2 is 0, x to the 0 power. X to the 0 power is just 1. So then you have the negative 11m left. So 1 times negative 11m is just negative 11m. And then here, over here, we're going to do again the x squared minus 2. Because again, when you divide, you subtract exponents. And so again, that is going to be x to the 0 power, which is 1. And then you're going to do 1 times the 18m. And so it would be 18m. So again, works the same way. You set up the division, do the division, and the only difference here on this problem was that, okay, when we get x to the 0 power, that's just 1, so you're just left with this other thing. Because basically what happens, if you look at it visually, the x squared is going to cancel, leave you the 4. The x squared is going to cancel, leave you the negative 11m. The x squared is going to cancel, leave you the 18m squared. And so that is how it works. And that cancels because it's x to the 0, which is just 1, so you multiply that. And so that should help you do those problems. We have a couple more types. Basically, the last section, you're just putting it all together on by yourself. On these other problems that we just did, they gave you what they pulled out. They gave you the greatest common monomial factor, and then you just divide it to get what that inside the parentheses part was. This next set of problems, you're going to actually have to find that for yourself and then do it. So if you look at like number 22, all they give you is 5x minus 15. And then you have to say, okay, what did we pull out, and then do the division and get the parentheses. You have to get both parts, not just the parenthesis part. And so again, to do this, the easy first way to do it to get the number is say, okay, look at your smallest number and say, can that smallest number go into the other numbers? So can a 5 go into a 15? Because if it does, that's the biggest number that can go into both of them. So 5 does go into 15, so the biggest number that can go into 5 and 15 is just 5. So that's what I'm going to pull out. Notice the x, this has an x, that doesn't have an x, so I can't pull an x out. They both have to have the same number of them. This one does not. So all I can bring out is a 5. I brought out a 5 because the 5 will go into the 5 and the 5 will go into the negative 15. So then I'm just going to do the division. So I'm going to do 5x divided by 5 minus 15 divided by 5. So 5 divided by 5 is just 1. So that just leaves you the x. So this answer goes there. 5 divided by 5 is 1, just leaves you the x. 15 divided by 5 would be a negative 3. And so that is your answer. So this right here is your answer. Again, the 5 came out because the 5 will go into 5, the 5 will go into 15, and we did the division and got our answer. Look at 20 through 30. We'll do 30 here. So 30 says, okay, PQ plus QR. So PQ plus QR. So I'm going to say, okay, what variable can go into both of those? So notice that this one has a P, This one does not have a P, so you can't pull a P out. This one has a Q, one of them. This one has a Q, one of them. So that means I can bring a Q out, one of them, because they both have one. This one has an R, but this one doesn't have an R, so all I can bring out is the Q. And so it's just going to be, okay, PQ divided by Q plus QR divided by Q. And again, when I do this, you're going to have Q to the first minus 1, which is Q to the 0, which means it's just 1, so you're left with whatever you had multiplied by. So I'm just left with the P. Q to the R minus Q is going to be Q to the first minus 1, which gives you Q to the 0, which means you're left with just whatever was multiplied by it, which was the R. And so that's your answer. Again, that's doing it numerically, algebraically. If you want to look at it as far as visually, how it cancels, you had a Q to the first, Q to the first, same number, so that means it cancels, left you just the P. You had the Q, R, and the Q. The Q's are the same, exactly the same, so they cancel, leaves you just with the R. And so that is how you're going to work it through. I'll do one more difficult one, and then y'all should be okay, I think. Let's see, what's a good one? Look at 52. So 52. Alright, so again, to find what number I pull out, I'm going to say, okay, can the smallest number go into the other one? In this case, the 2 can go into the 2. They're identical. And so you can pull out a 2. Alright, then I'm going to look at the variables and say, okay, what variable do each of them share? This one has an M, but has 3 of them in the M cubed. This one does not have an M, so I can't pull an M out, it has to stay. So then I go to the N. This one has an N. That one has an N. So I can say, okay, I can pull something out. They have the same variable. How many can I pull out? This one has an N to the first. This one has N squared. So how many of them do they eat? Oh, it's the highest number they share. And so this one has one of them. This one has one of them as well because it has 2. And so I can bring out 1 N. So I can't bring out 2 N's because this one has 2 of them, but this one only has 1, so I can only bring out 1. And so 2N, then I have to figure out what goes in here. So I'm just going to divide. So I'm going to do 2M cubed N divided by 2. Whatever that gets goes there. Then I'm going to do plus 2N squared divided by N. Whatever that is goes there. And so, or 2N. And so, when I do it here, number divided by number, 2 divided by 2 is just 1. And then the M cubed doesn't have another M, so I can just write it. And then here, N divided by N, you have to subtract the exponents. So N to the first minus 1 would be N to the 0. So that goes away to just 1, so it just goes away. And so again, if you want to look at that visually, the N's are going to cancel. And so it just leaves you with the 1M cubed. Over here, same thing, 2 divided by 2 just gives you the 1. Now I'm going to do N squared minus N. So it'll be N squared 2 minus 1, which would give you N to the first. And so it would be 1 N to the first. And so that would be your answer right here. So again, the first thing you do is see what you can pull out, see what number they have in common, what number can go and divide into both of them, then the highest one, and then see what variable they have in common, how many of them they have, they share. And so then you pull that out, then it's just division like we did previously. So that'll get you through this lesson. If you have any questions, get with me. Homework for this is going to be 1 through 51 all, and then try to review 1 through 51 odd, and then try to review all of them to try to get us where we need to be. So have a good day.